Thank you, Stephanie. So the objectives for today are to understand challenges posed by unauthorized access data breaches and insider threats and how certifications can be foundational for building secure access controls environment. We'll talk about designing certification campaigns to align with your industry and regulatory requirements. And then we'll also give some practical implementation strategies. So how to integrate certifications into your application security framework. My name is Carrie Bowman. I'm a Senior Director of Product Marketing here at PathLock, and I also have my CISA, and I spent the last 14 years in consulting and then on the software side of the house, leading risk and governance management program implementations, in particular being an application security SME and working with companies basically to assist them to build, implement, and maintain their governance programs with all the access controls frameworks and pieces that they put in place. And I'll let Anand introduce himself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Anand Koti. I'm the Director of Solution Engineering at PathLock. I've been with the company a little over 2 years and in the security industry for a little over 15 years. So thanks for joining the call, and over to you, Kerry.
Thank you. So we'll just kick off quickly with who is PathLock? Why are we presenting on this? Why are Anand and I talking to it in particular? So we are a market leader in application governance, risk, and compliance. And one of our key things that we built this company around is the concept of having a team of certified auditors. So CISAs like myself and other team members in our advisory team. We are application specialists across SAP, Oracle, Workday, and PeopleSoft. So we not only have the regulatory compliance background, but we do also have application specialties as well, so that we're really able to provide that coverage for our customers and talk to them about each of our offerings of application access governance, continuous controls monitoring, and cybersecurity application controls in the context in which they need to apply those to their industry and their business. We do have more than 1,300 customers globally, and we do reach more than 100 plus applications out of the box, so we can automate those key processes that you may be very familiar with, your joiner, mover, leaver, your access risk analysis, and access reviews, which we'll talk about today. So again, the idea here was just to introduce who we are and why this is a topic that we feel keen on speaking to you about. So with that said, I will set the stage. So why do certifications matter? Why is this something that we should be concerned with? Some stats that you might find interesting. I feel that these always really can set the stage when we're trying to make the case internally for why this is something we want to address. 50% of cloud security failures result from improper access management. So quite literally, half of the time when we have a failure, it's due to improper access that's been provisioned out and improperly managed. And along with that, 80% of data breaches are due specifically to misuse or compromise of the access we've assigned out. So when we think about the concept of certifications, where we're revalidating the access that's provisioned to our users, and that's acting as a control for us on what people have access to, that has a direct correlation to what if we were to have users misuse their access, or if their access was to be compromised, what someone can do with that. And the average cost of a data breach in 2022 was more than $4 million. So this is a very impactful breach that can occur if we're not properly managing that access. So how do we address that? Access governance life cycles include multiple steps that we can put in place, and all of these help us control the access that's assigned to users, right? It's how we properly design the access within the applications, our roles in SAP, our responsibilities in Oracle, right? How we provision and deprovision access, right? The joiner, mover, leaver concept, how people gain access and when their access changes as they move within and around the company and when they leave. How we handle access requests, what are the approvals that we ask for? And then step number 4 there that you see at the top, user access reviews. How are we enabling efficient review processes? How are we ensuring that we did a good job in step 1 of defining access that exists in the system? Steps 2 and 3 helped us to ensure that as new users join or move around the company, that we give them the access to do their job, so that we can be an operationally effective business. But what step number 4 is getting to for us is saying, let's be sure that people don't have stale access sitting there. Just because we're good at giving them access as they take on new job responsibilities does not mean that we're always as good at taking away access whenever they're no longer performing that job or backing that person up or doing those other things. So user access to reviews are a really effective way for us to revalidate the access that they need to continue having moving forward. And then obviously these things all roll into our SOD audits that we perform, the testing that we perform, and how we manage any kind of violations or exceptions. So this is kind of the life cycle that we follow to manage access controls holistically. And today we'll really focus in on that fourth step there, the user access reviews. Now, we've kind of baselined the challenges posed by unauthorized access, right? Data breaches, compromised access, how it costs companies significant dollar amounts, and why it matters. But now, how do we actually effectively implement certifications and revalidation of access? We want to take a compliance-focused approach. So if we start at the top right here with request, right? This is where we send our campaign out, where we define what the campaign's going to be that's sent to users for review. So we say, are we going to review this by individual application, or maybe it's a cross application, but it's by line manager, or is it by department head? We need to define the specifics of how we're going to parse out the reviews that we want performed. And that needs to be compliant and align with how we're expected to report on that for audit. So when we talk to our auditors and they have their risk and controls matrix and they have their list of the tests that they have to perform, we need to ensure that however we're performing this access review, it's compliant and aligned with what they're expecting. If they're expecting it to be reviewed by department heads, it's not going to be sufficient if we only have line managers review, right? And likewise, if they're expecting it to be by individual application and not by a collection of applications, we need to make sure that we've outlined all of that and clearly met their requirements prior to sending these out. We don't want to cause rework, right? Analysis. This is actually the contextual information that is being done when we put those certification campaigns together. So what all are we accounting for? Are we just saying, this is user A, they have application access within application B, and they're assigned roles C, D, and E? Is that all that we're doing? Or are we doing additional analysis? Are we including separation of duties results? Is this access that's assigned to this user in this application causing them to have access to a risk, be that a sensitive access risk or an SOD risk? When's the last time they logged into this system? Is that valuable information for our reviewers to understand? Is this access similar to other users that have it? When was this access initially assigned to them, right? This kind of contextual information can really help set our reviewers up to succeed, right? But it goes back to what information do we have available in our applications and what information is salient for those reviewers. So determining how we're going to analyze that information prior to sharing it with them is another key step that we need to ensure that we're setting them up to succeed. The review step, pretty straightforward. This is when we actually send our certification review to those approved user lists or approved reviewer lists, and they go through and they perform the review, right? Next is a decision. This is where they decide, will the user retain the access or will we revoke that access from them? And they need to make that decision on a line-by-line basis for everything assigned to them. Actions are associated with the decisions that are made. If we're doing this in an automated fashion, a tool may go and perform this for us. If we decide access is to be revoked, the tool can automatically revoke that access. But if we're not using a tool, we're following a manual process, for example, we need to have an after action plan. So when those decisions are made and those reviews are completed, we need to have a plan for someone within the support organization going out and actioning those revocations and reporting on them so that when we get to step 6 of audits coming in, they can see that our certifications were built at the request level to meet the compliance needs. The analysis information that was included was sufficient. The reviews and decisions were completed in full for all line items, and then the actions were actually taken and completed prior to audit that resulted from those user access reviews. So this is how we do a compliance-focused review process. We ensure that we meet each and every one of these steps along the way so that by the time we get to step 6 for audit, we've got everything in place to be successful. And then the last slide that I'll talk about before I hand it over to Anand to kind of dig into some real life examples of things are just 4 types of certifications to consider implementing. So these are ones that if I'm working with a customer and they're asking, okay, we know user access reviews are the most common one. Everyone is really familiar with those, right? A review of access assigned to users broken out by application. That's the example that I just used in the last slide. I know that we have to do that. What else might we want to do? Or what else might audit ask us about? Because as we're all very aware, and those of us with audit backgrounds know, we tend to tackle things in a pragmatic approach, one step at a time. If a customer's not doing any kind of user access reviews, then that's the first thing we need to get them to do. It's just a simple by application, by role assigned, by user, sign off and review the access. But once they've completed that, we want to expand on what they're actually reviewing and recertifying because it gives them more control over their environment. We think back to those data breach statistics, right? And that compromise of access. The more controlled we can have our environment be by performing these reviews, the more successful that we can be at managing that risk. So if they're coming to me and asking, what else might I consider? We would recommend these other 3 that you see here, role access reviews. So recertification of the roles that exist within an application. Just because we did a good job at that first step in application lifecycle management of designing our roles, that was when we initially designed them. Business processes change, operational processes change. It's good to revalidate that those roles are still necessary and actively used within our environment, because if they're not, we should go ahead and decommission them so that there's no chance of anyone inappropriately accessing them. Control recertification. This is a very common one actually, to recertify your controls and their continued operation, especially if we're looking at risks within the environment, for example, SOD risks or sensitive access. Any of those risks where we're required to apply a mitigating control, for example, to those risks where we're saying we can't revoke this risk from the user, they have to perform this access as part of their job responsibilities, but we have a mitigating control, it's operating, that's how we're mitigating this access. You typically have to recertify those controls at least once a year. And the way you recertify them is to revalidate both that the control itself is operating and still operating as you've defined it. Right, so if that control is for create a vendor, pay a vendor risk, the control may be that on a monthly basis, you run a report of all vendor changes that were made, and you confirm that they were made by appropriate people and the changes were appropriate. Okay, well, is that still your control? Is that control still operating effectively as defined? If so, is it also still tied to that exact risk or risks? It may be tied to more than one. Is that linkage still correct? That's a control recertification. And that's because sometimes our controls change. Maybe now we're not going to review vendor changes. Maybe we're just going to review the payment side. Maybe we're going to say on a monthly basis, we review all payments made to vendors and confirm the person making the payments and the payment totals are correct. It's again a control for the same risk. Are we using one of them? Are we using both? Have we switched? That's what a control recertification can do for us. And then 4, a risk recertification. So again, just like with our roles when we define them, when we define our risks initially for our company, what are separation of duties risks for us? What are sensitive access or critical access risks for us? That's point in time. So recertifying our risk rule set confirms that we still have the applicable risks for our applications, especially if we've seen any functionality changes in our applications. If we've moved functionalities around or operationally we've changed what we're doing, some of those risks may no longer be valid or active for us. So we want to risk recertify as well to, again, just ensure that we are continuing to report on the proper risks for our landscape. So those are 4 types of certifications we would consider implementing. And with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Anand to jump into some real life examples of how campaigns can be managed for certifications.
All right, thanks, Carrie. So Carrie talked about why certifications are important, right? She talked about how to tackle it at high level, and also talked about different types of certifications. What I'm going to focus on is, how Pathlock automates and accelerates certification, right? The primary focus for today's topic would be more on Pathlock platform and implementation strategies. These are the 2 areas that I'm going to drill down into. Now, as you could see, this is a cloud-based platform. Pathlog is a cloud-based platform. We have a unified look of all applications put together in one single pane of glass. That means you can have a lot of companies, organizations have about 8 to 20 applications ranging depending on how big your organization is. We can pull information from all these applications to help you do the certifications. Again, depending on the type of certification, we can go drill down into it. But as you could see, we have a dashboard that will give you a glimpse of all different applications that you have. You can run a quarterly review, you can run a monthly review depending on your need. You can schedule it. And if you go to the next slide, we do provide out of the box templates that can be deployed for the certification campaign. But if you decide and say, you know what, out of the box templates are great, but we are a huge organization, we are different, and I hear the stories all the time. Recently I was talking to someone who has about 60,000 employees and they have about 30, 40 apps. Guess what? When running a campaign, it's most important for you to slice and dice the select population. That means the employee base. So we do have 5-step approach for it. As you could see, first thing is the select population. You can say, you know what, I want to run a campaign for the folks who are in finance, who can do GL posting and work under a certain manager and work in a certain business unit or location. We can select the criteria however you want in the select population. And then you can go back to the next step where you can say, you know what, for this population, I want to run a review only for for the roles that they are attached to, the risks that are displayed for these roles, are inherent risks in those roles. We can do that in the step 2. The third step is more about, yes, you have this population, yes, you have this criteria that you want to look for. And now you can also come in and say, you know what, for what applications it's applicable to. And you can put in what is the objective of this campaign and then schedule the campaign. So the idea is that we have a dashboard that can give you a unified view, but at the same time, we do have a template that we can give you out of the box that can be deployed as a starter pack. But if you decide and say, you know what, I want to create a certification campaign that is custom to your business needs, we can absolutely do that. We can also schedule it, or we can run it in a periodic basis. The reason I say we can run it, schedule it, or ad hoc basis is because sometimes some campaigns, some certification campaigns, again, goes back to a use case. One of the prospects recently talked to me and said, you know what, I want to run a campaign or a certification campaign where my HR system says it's end of life and this employee has terminated, right? And but he has active accounts in multiple applications. I want to run a campaign and see this because I trust my administrators for these different applications are doing their job, but I want to make sure I can view this information and also make sure we certify on it. This is one of those compliance mandates they have. So when you start coming up with requirements like this, our platform, Pathlog Cloud Platform, is very flexible enough and it can accommodate all your needs, right? So if you go to the next slide, not only that, the other thing that I always hear from my prospects is that it's always challenging to convince your business audience or role owners who needs to review this information to get the job done. So what we do at Pathlog is make it easy for them. We provide all the information that is required for them so that they don't need to go back and say, you know what, I don't have enough information, I need more. What is the objective of this campaign really is? As you can see on the top, we do provide the objective of the campaign, the certification campaign, so that your business audience are clearly aware of what they are trying to do and why it is important for them to do it, so that they're not going back and saying, you know what, putting them as a back burner, rather they're just getting it done. And once they get to the review itself, we have a lot of drill down functionality. That means they can see at a high level and then just say, you know what, this is good enough information, I can approve it. Or you can drill down if they are technical enough and they understand what are these technical roles really mean, and they really want to get into that depth. we do have the information as well. So it's all at the fingertips of your business audience where they can take action on it, right? And so as I want to just repeat myself, it's a unified platform. We get application, we can integrate into multiple applications and pull the information into one single pane of glass. The campaigns, we do provide out of the box templates if you set a starter pack, but if you have requirements, we can customize the template, customize the campaigns to your certification campaigns to your needs. We also have enough information for your reviewers to make their life easy to get it done, because their primary focus is not just doing certification, but they have other things to do. So we want to make it as easy as possible so that they can get their job done sooner than later. Now, with that, I want to jump into the next topic, which is the implementation strategies, right? Over time, what I heard is, what type of review do you need to run, right? First thing, you need to define that. If you have a lot of user base, you need to understand the campaign and the certification campaign that you want to run. There are different types of certification campaigns, as you heard from Kerry. So it's important to understand what campaign you want to run, what is the purpose of this campaign, like what is the objective of this campaign. Yeah, you're designing a campaign, you're sending it to a reviewer, but what is the objective? How is it aligned to your business needs, like your organization mandates? Who should be involved? Early on, you need to understand who are all the parties who should be involved in this certification. Is it one person who should review it? Is it multiple people who have to review it? That's also equally important to understand. Do they have sufficient training to review this campaign and understand what needs to be done and all that? So at least you need to make sure they're aware of what this certification campaign means, and they're aware of what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and any training involved needs to be delivered. Now, once you have the basic set of information set up, right, it's important to figure out, is this campaign that I want to run on a periodic basis or ad hoc basis? Because, as I gave you an example, there could be use cases where you have administrators that you have to run a certification campaign on. And if you are running a campaign on roles that are very sensitive in nature or has a critical risk attached to it, you might want to look at them more often than looking at them once a quarter. And also, you need to understand what are the deadlines that are associated with it. Okay, you are creating a certification campaign, and you know what kind of campaign you're running, whom you're sending it to, what kind of deadlines are you dealing with. But you also need to understand if the deadlines are not met, what is the escalation path, right? Yeah. And sometimes the reviewers are sitting on it forever, and this is the common problem that we see across the board. So what is the escalation path? Once you have the findings and once you have the reviewer takes action on certain items, so what is the downstream activities that needs to be performed? Is that something that you want a platform like Pathlock to take care of it? Or is it something that you want to give it to an ITSM ticket and then give it to an administrator to take an action? So you need to clearly know what that is as well. And most important thing is that, one thing is making sure right people have right set of access and you're doing all the campaigns and reviews for your own purpose, but also you're trying to satisfy your internal auditors and external auditors. So you need to make sure the approach that you're taking is aligned with and agreed upon by your auditors as well. So these are the couple of steps that I usually try to recommend people, to make sure if you want to get your certification done, and you have to plan it, and these are the things that you have to take into consideration in order to have a successful certification review process, and also making sure you're getting it in time, on time. With that, I want to hand it over to Kerry.
Thanks, Anand. Just to reiterate, how can we help you with this? As we've mentioned, these tips and takeaways were meant to be helpful for you, whether you are maybe doing your process manually today or if you're searching for a tool to automate this for you. We do offer a tool that will do the automation for you. We have 3 different products: application access governance, continuous controls monitoring, and cybersecurity application controls. Within the application access governance, or AAG product, we do have a module specifically for certifications. It does cover all those types of reviews that we talked about with the screenshots that Anand showed. It does also address access risk analysis, your SOD, and sensitive access for multi-app risks, compliant provisioning. So again, thinking back to that access governance circle that we looked at, right? Role management, elevated access management, provisioning, it's really all the pieces that fall into there, obviously with a singular audit trail within the tool so that you're meeting those audit standards. Continuous controls monitoring is a continuation of this. Risk quantification, this is your transaction monitoring where you can actually see what they did do. So SOD and sensitive access can monitor what someone can do potentially risky. Risk quantification is a validation of if they did do that. It can be a real-time notification so that you can monitor that and review it as it occurs. Configuration change monitoring, business and manual process controls, and license management. Again, these are all continuous control monitoring related items where you're really optimizing what you've put in place. And cybersecurity application controls, these are things like dynamic data masking, code scanning, threat detection, transport controls, and data loss prevention and session logging. So again, closing the loop on a lot of the vulnerabilities that are potentially in your application, and going back to, managing. We know that access can be risky. So how are people accessing things? So in addition to things like certifications, dynamic data masking can be very valuable for making sure that users can only see what they should see and access what they're approved for by using some of those controls. So what are some of the value adds? Again, we like to give you takeaways, not just in terms of practicality, like what Anand walked through in terms of questions to think about as you implement your programs, but also to give you stats like what we started with. Why is it important? Here are some stats about end use cases. These come from customers that we've worked with, as well as industry numbers for what you can stand to gain through automating your controls. And so if you're looking to build a business case for why automation might be the right path for you or what you can look to gain, it helps out IT, business, and internal controls and audit, right? So no matter which part of the business you're sitting in, with IT teams, when you talk about a 50% task reduction, let's think about what Anand went through when he described how to build a campaign and set it up, right? If we're doing that manually today, that is a significant level of effort for our certifications. We are pulling multiple tables from multiple applications, tying it out to users, pulling maybe HR data on those users in. So we've got contextual information, we're pulling usage logs, we're adding that in. It's a significant amount of lift for our IT team to be able to do to prepare and send that out to the business. So if we can automate that for them by just having them define the parameters that they want, and then the tool builds those for them and sends it out, that's a significant task reduction. And what that means for IT realistically and practically is that they can move beyond keep the lights on, right? Move beyond those things that are just repetitive and redundant tasks that they're doing, and they can start fully supporting the business for those next business initiatives and projects that are in queue for them to do. So it can help them to gain more value add productivity like that for the company. Similarly with our business users, going back and thinking about reliable and clear results, the user interface that they're using, ensuring that they can move through these reviews quickly and that it's going to meet their auditor requirements and the regulatory requirements, right? If we're doing this in a manual manner and we don't have all the contextual information that we talked about, like, is this causing a risk? How long have they had this access? When did they last log into it? If we're just kind of giving them the basic information, they may be having to spend a significant amount of time going outside of whatever file we're sharing with them and following up with multiple other people to ask these types of questions. So by providing that to them in a user-friendly interface, we are simplifying their job. We're making it a one-stop shop for them to go in and review. And then similarly, as they make those decisions, if we've had our tool set up to go ahead and automatically complete the actions they define, then we're not sending it back to IT for IT to have to go manually, for example, revoke access. So again, we are significantly reducing the level of effort of our business users here as well, and that's saving them cost, especially when we also look at sometimes the need for consultants and things like that that come in to play when we're trying to pass our audit. So saving the business's time for performing the reviews, for executing them, and then also for the audit trail that's required, because the tool is keeping that audit trail for you. It simplifies what the business needs to send back for audit to be able to review. And then on the audit side, we're talking about reducing risk. If we have standardized the process that's followed, we can get through an audit significantly faster. And it also means that we can broaden the scope of what we're reviewing. So when we talked about 4 common types of certifications, if we're doing it manually, we may only be able to tackle user access reviews, which means that we may not have the bandwidth to bring into scope role access reviews or recertification of controls, recertification of risk, but those are things that we may want to do. By automating this, we're giving our audit team the capability to audit a broader range of things and thereby reduce our risk and manage and control that. And then additionally, because you're using a tool, it would standardize the audit trail. So it wouldn't matter if the application being reviewed was Salesforce or if it was Oracle. The audit trail looks the same, which means that your accuracy, your reliability, and the speed at which audit can go through and tick and tie out the results are significantly faster because it looks the same regardless of system, versus if you're doing it manually, the results can be very significantly and the system screenshots are all very different and that sort of thing. So again, we're gaining efficiency for audit, and by doing so, we can allow them to broaden their scope of what they can look at to continue to reduce risk. So with that said, Stephanie, I'm going to ask, do we have any questions that have been submitted?
Yes, we have a few questions. Our first question is, can user access reviews only be done by direct managers, or can a tool route to multiple managers for review?
Anand, do you want to take that one? Maybe some examples of what you've seen customers do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the short answer is yes. We can have multiple managers reviewing the user access review. We have prospects who came in and asked for to shorten the process with only one reviewer. We have prospects, we have customers who are currently using it for more than 5 reviewers. It all depends on your business. What I would suggest is that whenever you are trying to do a user access reviews, depending on who the user is, it can vary, right? If it is a user who is a general employee, doesn't have any elevated kind of access, trying to do his day-to-day job, probably 1 or 2 reviewers should be fine. But if you're someone who's like an administrator and someone who has a little elevated access, probably you might have extra set of eyes trying to get it done. Again, I would highly recommend to see what your auditors also recommend, to take their advice as well into consideration.
Okay, great. Our next question is, how long does it take to automate access reviews?
So Anand, I'm sure you can give some real life examples. I know from my experience, it depends on how many we're going to implement. So are we just doing the user access review, and is it for one application or for many? Yeah. And are the approval paths the same? We do have out of the box workflows if you want to do kind of the typical or standard workflows for those. And if you want to do some of the standard campaigns, we do have those out of the box as well. But as Anand mentioned, there's a breadth of flexibility in there for customizations that you may want to do. So I know if you use all of the out of the box materials, so out of the box workflows, out of the box campaigns, it's just a couple weeks to get it set up and running, which is really just set up the connector to your applications, and then set up, for example, like the managers and reviewers that you want to perform those reviews so that you can kick them off. So that's just a couple weeks to do. But Anna, maybe you can give some more specifics.
Yeah, so here is the thing. You're right about it, Kerry. So it all depends on what your scope of applications are and what level of workflows that you want to go with, right? We do have out-of-the-box templates that can support you, but obviously if you have some specific requirements, the scope can creep, right? But here is the thing. In general, if there's an application that we support out of the box and we have the connector established, guess what? We can get you up and running within a week, within a few days. Because once you have the connector established, getting the data from those apps is pretty straightforward. And then running the campaign, the first campaign can be run within a few days. But this is where it's important to understand what the scope is and what level of reviews that you want. Is it out of the box? What we provide is good enough, or is there something specific your auditors are asking or requesting you to do? We're more than happy to accommodate it, but that increases the scope and in general, but that's that range that can vary depending on the requirement.
Okay, and our next question is, do you have the capability to integrate with our homegrown applications?
Yeah, so I'll take this question. So, just to give you a little more background, Pathlock has been around for 15 years, and integrating into application is our forte. It's been something that we've been doing for quite a bit of time. And we also have established a team within our company that can, all they do is day in, day out, they integrate into applications. So what I'm trying to come down to is, if homegrown application, we can integrate into it. It's obviously we cannot support it out of the box, so we need to work with your team to understand what is the stack, under it, and then understand, what kind of APIs you're exposing, so that we can establish the connection. The short answer is yes, we do it often. The long answer is we need to work with you to. It's a collaborative effort because we don't know what we don't know about your app, so we have to work with you to understand how the app has been built.
Okay, perfect. Looks like that's all the questions we have for today. We just want to thank everyone for coming. And if you want any more information about any of our tools, you can go to pathlock.com. That will include the latest Gooping Coal report, and Pathlock was named a leader in 2 prestigious industry reports, and you can find that at pathlock.com. We encourage you to go there. If you also have any questions, you can reach out to us at info@pathlock.com, and we would be happy to reach out and answer any of your questions. And with that, I'll just thank our presenters and thank the people and thank the attendees, and we'll see you next time.